Hello, dear Coach Magazine Global audience. We are here with our 20th guest. It's our first anniversary of these 5 o'clock tea talks. I'm saying 20th guest because I had two guests in one interview. So it's our 19th interview, 19th 5 o'clock tea talk. I would like to encourage all of you to subscribe to our channel at the beginning and for the more information, please turn on your bells. We will very appreciate your support. And today I will introduce you my next guest, Sarah Leach. She is a lecturer in coaching at Henley Business School. She teaches on the professional certificate in executive coaching. Sarah previously spent 4 years as a senior member of Henley Business School's Careers and Professional Development team. She designed and delivered the Careers and Professional Development module of the MBA and provided one-to-one career coaching for executive MBA students. She is a contributing author to the Coach's Handbook, Succeeding as a Coach and Coaching Tools, and co-editor of Third Wave Cognitive Behavioral Coaching, published in January 2022. An executive coach since 2013, she has led her own coaching practice following 10 years of corporate experience in the utility sector and has successfully supported teams and individuals to confidently navigate change. She enjoys working with high achievers, helping clients to flourish by shaping order out of chaos and challenging them to find their edge to stride forwards with confidence and clarity, making conscious choices and taking purposeful action. As a professional certificate coach with the International Coaching Federation, Master Stethoscope Practitioner, Licensed Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and Team Management Systems Practitioner, and Mental Health First Aider, Sarah draws on a number of tools to enable deeper insight and meaningful change for her clients. She is interested in strengths-based approach to enabling change, career, leadership, and work-life balance topics. She has a postgraduate diploma in management studies and completed an MSc in coaching and behavioral change last year. Welcome, Sarah. Thanks for accepting my invitation. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being us in a wonderful London day today.
Yes, the sun has come out.
Very sunny. Yes, you see it from the windows behind you.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
not very common, right?
No, not very common at all. Not lately, anyway.
Yeah. So I would like to start with my first question. Could you share some key insights or experiences from your transition from a corporate career, as I explained before, in the utility sector to becoming an executive coach? How did your corporate background influence your coaching approach?
Yes, well, it was in my corporate world that I experienced my first coach, and I started to realise that some of the skills that I had might be better suited to that kind of work, having been on the receiving end of coaching. And my mentor at the time also suggested that it might be an area worth exploring for me. So, it reminds me how someone independent, such as a coach or a mentor, can often see things that you can't. So they sort of suggested that coaching might be my thing. Anyway, long story short, I took some time out when I started my family from work and sort of spent some time and money on my coach training. And here I am today, practicing as a coach. So, but I think there's lots of things that I take from my corporate experience into my coaching. But the first thing I think I had to let go of when I stepped into the world of coaching was thinking about that boundary between mentoring and coaching. In the corporate world, I was the decision maker. I was running teams. I was managing people. People were looking to me for the solutions, for the answers. And, when you step into this world of coaching, you have to learn to let all of that go. And so that, I guess that was the first challenge for me. Your coachees know their lives better than anyone else. So, um, you have to trust that they've got the answers. So that was the first thing. Secondly, I suppose, being part of an organisational system, I was part of lots of different teams, and I worked across teams and with hybrid teams with lots of different people and nationalities and cultural backgrounds. It gave me a great insight into what systems meant in the terms of organisational systems, and how that influenced the way we operate at work. And I suppose, having experienced that personally, I've got lots of things that I can now draw on as a coach when I'm working with my coachees. There is a flip side to that, however, which is I need to continually remind myself that I mustn't assume I know what they're experiencing, because their experience could be very different to mine. But it does bring with it, allow me to bring a degree of empathy, I think, with my coachees. But I think the biggest influence having that corporate experience has had on the way in which I operate as a coach is really paying attention to the wider system that our coachees are in, and how they or that can become a barrier or an enabler to the change they want to make. And it's really important that we consider that, I think, in our work with our coachees.
Yes, it's a mindset change, as you mentioned, from the corporate background to be the decision maker to
Yes,
the enabler.
yes, exactly.
So you have extensive experience in both individual and team coaching. Can you describe a particularly challenging coaching situation you encountered and how you helped your client or team navigate it successfully?
Yeah, I mean, I've had many challenging encounters, but I think, on reflection, what's worked for me is partnering with my client or the team that I'm working with in the moment to say, what's going on here? How can we work better together? And the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, talks a lot about the need to partner effectively with your coachee. We don't have all the answers, and together we can make it work. But I do remember one particular client in my very early days, who was finding it really difficult to engage in the process of coaching. They desperately wanted to be part of it. I think they instinctively knew it would be good for them, but they were struggling to settle in. I think it was a mixture of being able to trust the process and being vulnerable enough to really show up and to share what was happening and going on for them in their minds. And I remember our first session, we sat together in silence for about 40 minutes before she said anything, and that was a real challenge for me. But we held the space, and I just said, as and when you're ready, share with me what's going on for you. And eventually she started talking, and I think, she left that session. I thought, well, I'm probably never going to see this lady again, but she came back, and she came back again and came back again, and that time that we spent in silence got shorter and shorter and shorter. And actually we started to work out together. Actually, it wasn't about necessarily the conversation. We started to work in metaphors, and we started to use our bodies to experience the challenge that she was thinking about. And again, we got creative together as a partnership to work out what we needed to do, and we did some great work together. And actually, several years later, she occasionally pops up and she says, Sarah, can I have a few more sessions? And that's really nice. I find like we finally found our groove together. So that was a challenge. And similarly with a team, I remember one particular team where they had a number of field operators who were out there in the field, feeling quite isolated, alone, unsupported. And so we got the team together, and rarely had they sat in the same room together. And we just had a conversation. We just started a conversation about what does it mean to be a team, and we explored their own individual perceptions of that, as well as the organizational view of what team meant. And then inevitably we uncovered that there was a trust issue, and we started to explore trust together and help them to understand what it felt like to be other members of the team. They all sort of started to role play, if you like, being somebody else in the team. So that's breaking down barriers and opening people's awareness to things outside of their zone of control, if you like. And that really helped. And in fact, several of those members now say to me, the work they did there really helped them in their personal lives as well as their work lives, making them realize that there's plenty of different ways to look at the same challenge. And I think that's what I love about coaching is the ripple effect it has beyond the presenting issue, and people actually take the experience they've had through coaching and kind of multiply it, if you like, across lots of different areas of their life. And it's not just related to the topic they've presented.
Yes, it resonated with me, especially the individual story you talked about the silence. I
Yeah.
only experienced this for 2 minutes when I attended to a listening workshop. The psychologist told us to be in the room for 2 minutes, talk about you, and the other two people will appreciate what you talk about and just reflect what you said without adding any judgments,
Mm,
any
mm.
opinions of them. And one of our group member just didn't feel like talking and she wanted to be silent, and it was very difficult to stay silent. Well, it was, a lot of things going on in your mind.
Yeah.
What's going on? What is she thinking? Why doesn't she want to share anything? That is a very challenging situation. Wow, 40 minutes. It's a real success story for me because to hear that, as you said, afterwards, she come back and the
Yes.
silent time come be little.
Yes.
So
Shorter and shorter. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I wasn't purposely doing, there's an approach called time to think, which I'm sure many of your listeners will have heard about, a humanistic approach to coaching. And I wasn't purposefully employing that technique. She just wasn't able to communicate verbally what was happening for her. And so that's how, we found another way around it. We found a different way of talking about the issue. Yeah, that's what I love
And there's
about
this
coaching.
term called coachable. Not everybody are coachable. Not
No.
everyone can coach. Also, not everyone get coached.
Mm.
But this lady find her way to,
Yes.
you know, make more personal development. She was willing to. I think that's
Yeah.
why she come back.
She really was willing. She was determined to make it work, even though I
Yes.
think it was painful for her at
It's
times.
a very good example. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay.
And my next question, your work involves various coaching tools. As an eclectic coach, I know you choose the things you think are most relevant to the presenting issue. How do these tools enhance and or hinder the coaching process? And can you provide an example of how they've made a significant impact on clients' development?
Yes, yeah. So I think tools and techniques definitely have their place in coaching for sure. And I would encourage all of us coaches to learn and explore different tools and techniques, but to hold them very lightly. Um, and what I mean by that is to not assume they are the answer. They might be, or a version of them might be, but I think it's the skill of the coach to kind of match the tool to the presenting issue and really recognize when perhaps, just listening is a tool enough, and I think the more options you have in your toolkit, obviously the more scope you have to play in that environment and find the right thing for your coachee, but don't rely on them. And I think there are some coaches that specialize in a particular technique. Time to think I've mentioned, for example, or cognitive behavioral coaching. And they will find their coachees who are looking for that particular intervention because they have a particular need that suits that style, and that's absolutely fine. But I think many executive coaches draw on a range of different approaches to support their work according to the client's presenting issue. So I'll give you an example of a particular technique that I've used in its purest form with a client, and then maybe how I've adapted it slightly because of the presenting issue. So I remember one particular client, and this happens actually quite a lot in my coaching. They come with some kind of relational issue. They had to have a particularly challenging conversation with a peer at work, and so when I got to understand the issue a bit better, I decided that we might experiment with the empty chair technique, which is part of the Gestalt approach to coaching. And there's a particular way of employing this technique. And I knew for this particular instance that I was going to apply the technique to the letter. I was following the rules, the structure of the tool quite clearly. And we explored the 4 different positions. And at the end, the coachee had some new insights as to how they were going to manage that conversation differently. Now, I had another coachee who was struggling to understand the dynamics of the boardroom within which they sat. And I applied the empty chair technique there, but in a very different way. I kind of Sarahized it, if you can call it that. I I took the essence of the approach and then adapted it with lots of other things that I felt would be relevant. So we used some somatic exercises alongside the empty chair technique, and I got my coachee to experience what it would be like to sit in the various seats around the boardroom table, and to somehow embody that experience, to see if that shone a light on um, anything that he was experiencing in that moment. And I was ready at any stage to let go of that technique, and inevitably in having taking those seats around the table, lots of different things popped up. So there were many different avenues we explored and we wandered down. And in those moments, I let go of the technique completely and just followed my coachee where they wanted to go. And then we'd come back to the table, as it were, and we'd start again and go again. And, it was a very flexible, adaptable way of using, the same technique, but working with and adapting and flexing how you applied it depending on where the coachee was going. And yeah, I just am led by the coachee. I think that's where we need to start from. We need to assume that they know where they're going. We might have to guide them sometimes and suggest things that we might experience in that moment. But generally, if you hold those tools lightly, you can draw on the essence of what the approach is trying to get at and apply a multiple number of things to get to the solution, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that sounds very effective.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your version of the empty chair.
Yes.
Well, you used one time, it's an example for one time. Maybe you twisted it in other sessions for other coaches differently. It just
Yeah.
happens on the session, and it is important for us to get leaded by the coachee and enable them to find their own way.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for this answer.
Yeah.
So my next question, well, before we jump into the next question, I would like to take a break here in the middle. We are in the middle of our conversation, and
Mm.
I would like to encourage our audience to subscribe to our social media accounts in Instagram, coachmagazine.global, and in LinkedIn, Coach Magazine Global again. It is very helpful for us to reach more people to share these beautiful contents. If you like our contents, please share with your network. Thank you so much. So, Sarah, you mentioned your interest in strengths-based approach to
Mm.
coaching. Could you elaborate on how you help clients discover and leverage their strengths to achieve their goals and enhance their careers?
Yeah. Yeah. So strengths finding, I think the first thing to say is the term strengths is perhaps a little misnomer. It's not about skills and competencies, it's about what energizes you. So it's about your innate strengths, things that are within, if you like, and how that manifests itself in reality. So strengths finding is often about noticing when you're in flow, so those moments when you're, firing on all four cylinders, time is passing without you realizing, you're really engaged in what you're doing. You're energized, you're energized by the task. And that's what we need to find. What is it that enables you to feel like that, to be like that? And versus, those things that drain you, so you might have a skill or competency in something, but you find it exhausting, and you want to sleep for a week after you've been you've been doing that, and it's just not motivating or inspiring for you. um, and I think most of us learn to develop these skills because our roles have required it of us, or the environment within which we're operating has determined that to be how we have to behave, or the things that we have to do. And often or not, in our careers, we forget to take the time out to think, oh, do we often stop about and think about what's really energizing us? Is this task really how I want to be spending my time? Should I be doing something else? And I actually use a particular tool called Strength Scope to help people identify their inner energizers, if you like. But there are lots of different ways that you can do it. You don't need to use a psychometric tool. You can even just have a very open conversation with someone about, when was the time they felt in their full power, and what was that? And in them exploring that, you can identify and pick out the things that might be the most energizing for them. Get curious about that person sat in front of you. And I think sometimes our strengths are actually hidden to us because they're so embedded in our subconscious that we don't even recognize them as things that are energizing for us. So even, there's simple things like looking at feedback that you may have received. How have other people described you? What do they see, in what you do? And why do people ask you to do the things that they ask you to do? What is it about you that, draws them to you to do those things? And you can uncover hidden strengths in lots of different ways, and then what the smart piece then is, once you've kind of uncovered them, is thinking about, well, how can I utilize them more? How can I find that magic place where, in strength scope language, we call it the zone of peak performance, where your skills and your competencies overlap with the things that really energize you. And when you're in that place, you're your best, most effective, most energized self. And so not only do you benefit, but your organization benefits because you're, really focused on your performance and those outcomes. So it's a really enriching and enlivening place to be. Obviously there's some reality here, which is, we can't spend 100% of our time in that spot. The world isn't perfect, jobs aren't perfect, we aren't perfect. But if we can find a way to do more of what we love and what we're good at, then that's where the juice, the real, that's where the juice lies. That's where the good stuff is. And I think, it's part of our role as career coaches and leadership coaches to help uncover that for our coachees.
So it is important for our coaches. Well, we start the sessions with their strengths, so we know our coaches better. And whenever they struggle with something to reach their goals, we can remind them, when is the most successful time that you did something very easily, and let's dig into that. And yeah, to just remind them their strengths easily can change the course and
Yeah,
the results with them. Yeah,
yeah. Thank you very much.
I love talking about strengths. So as a lecturer in coaching, you likely encountered aspiring coaches looking to develop their skills. What advice would you give to someone aspiring to become an effective executive coach, especially in today's fast changing business landscape?
Yeah. This is a great question. I think my first starting point would be to master the basics. Okay. And we've talked about tools and techniques and, strengths and all these things, but the best coaching I've ever seen is when the coach is paying absolute beautiful attention to their coachee and listening with every part of their body to what their coachee is saying. And, they're listening out for what is and isn't being said. And it would appear that they're barely doing anything, but they're really being present with their coachee and listening well, and then using what they've learned about their coachee to then evoke awareness. What we're really doing in coaching is trying to raise our coachee's self-awareness, above all else. And unless as a coach you're fully present, it's very difficult to be listening 100%. And I think that's the skill that we have to master. It's a difficult one because, we're generally, as human beings, overstimulated, aren't we, in this world? There's so many things that are going on and we can't focus on much. But actually, when you're in that coaching room with your client in front of them, they want you to be focusing on them 100%. And all this other noise has to be quietened down, parked and put to one side. So I think master the basics, listen with all of your being. That would be my first tip. And then, we've touched on tools and techniques, but build your toolbox, give yourself the chance to bring other things into the conversation that might help raise that awareness in your coachee. And that could be all sorts of things, explore the things that feel right for you, that feel genuine and authentic to your style of coaching. Don't be someone that you're not, be you. And you will attract the people that want to work with you. And that's the best thing. And I think it sounds like a bit of a simple thing to say, but practice, 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 and then practice some more. We often forget that in a weird sort of way. And no matter how much of a natural coach you are, there's nothing that beats practice. You have to throw yourself in. You have to do those hours. You have to experience all sorts of coachees, so that you can have trust and confidence in yourself that you are enough as the coach. Mm-hmm. You are enough. And you can be there 100% with your coachee. Stay curious, assume nothing. I see lots of my student coaches getting frustrated with their coachees because they think they know the answer. So it's obvious, isn't it? So you just need to do this. And really, is it obvious? Are you living? And it's so hard to sit there and let go of those assumptions. We really need to not assume that we know what the answer is. So get curious.
That's our answer.
Yes. Thank you. And then keep on with that CPD. Invest in yourself. Have a coach. I know it sounds silly, but get a coach yourself and start experiencing it for yourself. The more we are aware of ourselves, the better we will be for our coachees. Find a way to stay in touch with grassroots as well. I just mentioned my students in coaching, how they get frustrated, but also in observing these brand new coaches, I learn something new all the time. As those of us who've got a few more years under our belts, we kind of get stuck in our ways sometimes. And we think we've been there, seen it all. We haven't. We're still absolutely learning. And sometimes these wonderful new coaches approach something in such a fresh and enlightening way. And there's me doing my observations and thinking, oh, I love that. That's new. That's great. So just, keeping in touch with all levels of coaching, I think, and taking that beginner's mindset on really genuinely would really help. I think all coaches, yeah, invest in yourself and develop a network to help you. It's really important to feel like you're not alone. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I would like to say my takeaways from your this answer, especially to be a great coach. Well, we are always on the journey, but explore this human universe, what I want to call, because human psychology, everything is endless. It's huge, and every time
yeah,
you come across new things and
yeah,
explore, so stay curious and listening is the baseline. Practice, 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 and
yes,
um, always try to know yourself better.
yes,
Always.
yes, yes.
Yes.
Great summary.
Thank you so much. So this is our last question. I'm sorry it's going to end this after this question, but it's very wonderful. I love it. Your recent publications, such as Third Wave Cognitive Behavioral Coaching, reflect your deep involvement in the coaching field. Can you share any new trends or insights you observed in the industry and how coaches can stay relevant and effective in light of these developments? Additionally, could you discuss your master's degree research on the relationship between attachment style and trust building in the coaching relationship and how coaches can apply these findings in their practice? I know it's a long question, but you can put it into parts.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, Well, I suppose so. Building on my first point, my last point, sorry. The thing that I would say is it's really important for us to invest in our continuous professional development as coaches. We're never done working on ourselves and raising self awareness and having relevant experiences and reflecting on that and then applying the learning. Kolb's learning cycle. You do it, reflect on it, learn from it, go again. This is what we're doing all the time as coaches. And every single new coachee that we have will test us and bring something new and bring something different. It's important we continue to reflect on that, whether it's a learning journal or it's with your supervisor or with your coach or with a peer or whatever it might be. I think reflecting on practice is really, really important. Um, I think, there's more and more research being done now purely on coaching. So where coaching has come from is we've taken a lot of the knowledge from therapy and we've applied it in the context of coaching. What we're seeing now coming through in the research, which I love, is research done on coaching for coaching. Which might sound a little bit silly, but it really highlights the nuances between therapy and coaching. And I would suggest that coaches look out for papers and research that focuses on coaching as opposed to therapy, and just to understand the difference between that, because I think it's bringing a slightly new edge to coaching that perhaps we haven't considered before. So that's important. And also, as I mentioned before, leaning on a community of coaches that you can learn together and practice together and experience each other's stories together is important. Um, and also think about how your coaching is changing. So you're getting people in your coaching room, if you like, and they're having real life lived experiences that are bringing to the room. What are you noticing people now talking about and speaking about, and how are you adapting your coaching practice to accommodate that? Or are you sitting firmly in your seat and not changing and not moving with the time? So notice what your coaches are bringing to the room. I know it sounds a really obvious point, but I think some of us miss that sometimes. And also, you're a human being, you're experiencing life out there in the big wide world. So what's coming up for you and your experiences is very likely that's coming up for your coachees. So, think about how you bring that into the room. In terms of specific trends, the third wave cognitive behavioral coaching, which is the book that I co-edited with Jonathan Passmore, is, it's called third wave because it's a development on of the psychology of cognitive behavioral coaching, starting out with behavioral psychology that's developed into cognitive behavioral coaching, and then the third wave now being this drive towards more kind of values-based living, so acceptance and commitment therapy, compassion-based therapy. I think we're starting to realize that people are really looking to live purposeful lives in this busy world that we live in, want more meaning, and they're having to balance their health and their well-being and their mental well-being in all of that too. And so I think there's a lot more focus on that kind of coaching now than there ever has been. The other thing that I notice, and I'm sure you do in your coaching center as well, is you can't help but turn on the news and see this world imploding in parts, and there's lots of things in turmoil that are really around the breakdown of relationships, whether at an extreme that's about war or, and other systems where our relationships are less resilient, and you can even include climate change in that as well. There's some really big issues out there, and it's starting to seep into the micro environment, which is the coaching room, so what's your position on these things? How are you bringing yourself in relation to these really big topics into the coaching room? I think we need to be really mindful of that, thinking about how these macro issues globally are filtering their way down in the system to actually impact the individual that sits in front of you as a coachee, and how you want to be able to respond to that. So I think as coaches, we need to get our head around how we support our coachees in managing these things. It could be about diversity and inclusion coaching, or it could be climate change coaching, or whatever it is. But there's some things that we really need to think about, I think, in relation to that micro environment that we establish within the coaching relationship. It's really important.
Yeah, there are lots of things to explore in that third wave
Yeah,
psychology.
yeah. I mean, going back to my individual research, I think I've touched on relationships, but for me, and I'm conscious it is one of my biases, but I truly believe that the relationship is key for coaching, and trust within that relationship is central to the work that we do with our coachees. And if it's absent, then the coaching relationship, I think, will be ineffective, or at its best transactional as opposed to transformational. And so in my research, I was looking at how trust is actually built in the coaching relationship by looking at a particular angle, which was attachment theory. So looking at the coachee's attachment style, which is a precursor to trust, and how they view and experience trust, and whether there's any impact on how they then build trust within the coaching relationship, and how as a coach we might have to bend and flex our style to accommodate our coachee's attachment style. So it's a microcosm of the world of trust. I appreciate that, but it was a really interesting exploration into the relationship, which I think we really need to focus on. I think, if you think back to those global issues, if we can focus on enhancing those relationships, building quality, compassionate, kind relationships, trusting relationships, then we're going to surely be in a better place. Anyway, I could go on forever about that topic, but I think it's fascinating to see how it plays out in the coaching relationship, and then you just what's the impact of that as it gets bigger and bigger outside of the coaching room, and how that might manifest itself in some of the issues that we see today. Yeah. So,
Yeah, thank you. I wonder, out of my curiosity, how do you use this attachment style tool as a tool? Do you make themselves to test their attachment style prior to the session, or do you do it on the session?
so in my research, I asked people that had been coached to complete an attachment style questionnaire, and then got them to rate their levels of trust in the coaching relationship with their coach. So it was very much a quantitative study. So that was the research that I did. But in practical sense, you could ask your coaches to complete an attachment style questionnaire. I think there are other things that we can do in the run up to the coaching engagement starting, the chemistry session, and then those first few sessions that we have with our coachee, that we can test and give us an indication of where they might be coming from, what their starting to position might be. And I think that's about, us as coaches having a better understanding of attachment theory, and then working out how do I explore this without getting them to complete a psychometric, which can often be a little bit of a barrier to enabling trust in the first place, because they just think it's, data collection, rather than them really building a relationship with that individual and understanding who they are. So, yeah, I would suggest there's things that we can do in the chemistry session that can really highlight some of the attachment issues that might be present. But again, it's an exploration, no assumptions, no judgments. You will
Yeah.
find out more as you go, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah. It
Pleasure.
was very insightful conversation with you today. I'm sure my audience take notes while listening to you. Sarah Leach was with us today. She is a lecturer, so it was a wonderful lecture about coaching for me. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you.
I'm at the beginning of the coaching journey, also as a coach. I started 5 years ago, but I'm taking my ICF credentials just now. So I'm listening to with awe. I
Good.
would like to explore more about what you said in your answers. Thank you so much for being together with us today, and would like to contribute with you in other subjects, in other projects. She also will be in our next issue with the coaching research in the UK. Thank you so much for that too.
That's a pleasure.
And I again would like to encourage our audience to subscribe to our channel and our social media for more content like this. Please continue to share us, like us, comment under these videos in our posts. And don't forget to subscribe to our website, thecoachmagazine.com, which is in we have 6 issues only right now, and our seventh issue will be out there in May. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Thank you.